Hey there, welcome to episode 17 of Branded by Amazing. I'm Mike McClary. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Amazing.com. And today, we're lucky to have one of the premier sourcing and shipping experts that I've ever gotten the chance to personally know and kind of see speak on stage and teach other people everything he knows about sourcing and shipping. We're lucky to have him with us here today. He is the owner and founder of Sourcing with Kian and works with a lot of other industries and other businesses, including us here. And so we're happy to bring him on. So I want to welcome Kian Golzari. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks very much for having me on. It's a pleasure and glad to be here.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you on, especially given kind of the timing of what's going on in the world right now with shipping. But first, why don't you kind of tell everyone, what is it exactly that you do and what kind of brought you to this place in your life right now?
Sure. I mean, luckily, I've been involved in sourcing and manufacturing like my entire professional life. And how I sort of jumped into this is that I grew up in a family business. And, you know, from when I was like 5 years old, my dad was going to China because he was starting his business, and he started off with a store, and then he was like, well, I understand goods are made in China. I want to understand that better. So I'm just going to go straight to the source and figure it out. And this was when China was just sort of coming out of like a communist rule, and these factories were just sort of developing privatized for the first time. And he was sort of helping those factories build up to say like, oh, hey, this is how we make goods in the West. And then they're like, okay, cool. And then they just started working together and really helping each other. And then when I was 5 years old, I had like Chinese factory owners like come to my house in Scotland. And like, so literally I grew up in this environment. So as a kid, I just learned a lot about Chinese culture. And I was just so curious as well, like, you know, what goes on over there? How are the products made? And then luckily, when I graduated university, the first thing I did was go to China with my dad. And he took me to the Canton Fair. He took me to loads of factories. And it just kind of blew my mind because I was curious about it my entire life, basically. And what was supposed to be a 2-week trip was I canceled my flight home. I stayed there for 3 months. I set up an office there, went back home to get my things, and then moved back to China and then lived there full time. And in that time, I, you know, developed over 2,500 products, visited more than 500 factories, attended more than 20 Canton fairs. And, you know, I was supplying family business, family brand, as well as a lot of retailers, licenses, worked with the Olympics, the NBA, the United Nations. And that really just comes down to, you know, being able to source the best possible product from the best factory at the best price. And then you're able to supply anyone, right? And that really just came from the knowledge and the time that I'd spent there. And then in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I've just been speaking on stages about sourcing, you know, setting up a YouTube channel, Facebook group, just helping people, and then just helping e-commerce and Amazon sellers, because now it's the Amazon sellers which have got the gigantic orders and which are overtaking, you know, traditional retail as well. So it's been a pleasure to work with many different types of e-commerce sellers as well.
Wow, that's incredible. You know, I was kind of joking earlier before the podcast that you know, what brought you here? You probably didn't grow up wanting to be a sourcing expert, but I was wrong. Sounds like you did. And how old were you when you took that first trip to China and decided to stay there?
21.
Oh, wow. And then that's when you decided stay there for 3 months and kind of make a business out of it.
Exactly. It just sparked my curiosity because like from the age of 5, I just saw my dad come home from all these China trips, and he'd always bring these cool gifts from China, like these cool paintings, these like teddy bear pandas, these oddly shaped rocks. And then like products from the factories just full of samples. I was just so curious. I was like, I've got to go there. And then when I went, it blew my mind. And the cool thing was that at that time, and China still is going through like a massive growth, right? So every 6 months you would see like a new highway, a new airport, a new 5-star hotel, new factories. And it's just like Western bars, nightclubs, restaurants. It was just, everything was growing. And then you sort of became like addicted to that growth mindset. And then you come back home. Like I grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland, which is a lovely place, but everything's the same people, same restaurants. And then you go back to China, boom, 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 everything's growing again. So it was almost like addictive to be there, right? Because then you're part of the growth, and it just sparked this crazy journey for me.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting to think about because I have yet to be to China or to head over to China. And I never really think about that. Most people who sell on Amazon, their own e-commerce sites who haven't been there, probably don't see all the growth that you've been able to see and experience firsthand in China.
Yeah, I mean, super lucky. And it's not only on the manufacturing side, but it's also just in the country in general. And then, a lot of people see how powerful China is in the world today, but I could kind of see this coming from like 15 years ago, and they have a much more long-term approach in terms of how they want to grow and build their country and economy, compared to sort of the States, where it's kind of like term by term, 4 years president, right? This is what we want to achieve. All right, president's out, now we're going to start from zero. And you can kind of see how China's grown so much because of their one party policy. But hey, we're not here to talk about politics.
No, and I'd love to talk to you more about sourcing. I know that you are, of all the people I know, the expert in sourcing, and I think we'll do a future podcast on that as well, because I know we can devote an entire session or two about it. But what I wanted to really talk to you about today, because it's so timely and topical, is what's going on in the shipping industry. Can you explain a little bit for our listeners out there who may be selling on Amazon, selling on their own website, or looking to do that? Can you tell them what's kind of going on with shipping? They may have read something on the news, but what's happening in the shipping industry right now?
For sure. So if we take a step back, right, prior to, let's just call it the situation, shipping was always pretty stable, right? Your container prices tended to be, $2,000-$3,000 a container, depending if you're shipping a 20-foot or a 40-foot. And it was relatively stable. The price didn't fluctuate too much. Now, during the situation, the pandemic, like the prices started to skyrocket. We were used to seeing like $3,000, and it was going up to 8, then 10, then 12, then 15, and then people were even getting prices of $20,000 per container. And it even went up to like $24,000 to container. And imagine what that does to your margins. Like if you can fit 1,000 units in a container and you're paying $3,000 for that, you're paying $3 a unit for your shipping. But now if it goes up to $20,000, you're now paying $20 per unit, which greatly affects the margin of your product. And how this happened, like how did we get here? Well, it was really just like the positive cases that we experienced here in the US. So there's a positive case, they close the warehouse. All right, there's been an outbreak. We have to close it down, test everyone. And then once we have all these negative tests, then we can reopen. So the shipments are coming to the ports in the US, the LA port, and they're piling up because the warehouses are closed, because they're not unloading containers because there's positive cases. And then as a result of those containers piling up, it now starts to mess up the circulation, because what used to happen, shipment comes, container comes, gets unloaded, the empty container gets shipped back to China, it gets filled up again, and these containers are just in constant circulation. But with them getting stuck in the States or in Europe, those empty containers are no longer going back to China. But e-commerce demand and production demand is skyrocketing, because now we need, home goods, office goods, gardening goods, sport fitness goods. So the production demand has spiked, but then the empty containers are not there. So we have this increased demand and decreased supply, which then just gradually just kept putting the prices up. Even I was flying a few weeks ago from LA to Scottsdale, Arizona, and we flew over Long Beach Port. And I personally saw with my own eyes, like over 50 containers just waiting at the port. And I took a photo on my phone. I'm not sure if you can see it there, but you've got like 50 vessels, and each vessel here can hold up to 10 to 20,000 containers. So in that one picture, we're looking at 500,000 to 1 million containers, which are just sitting at the port waiting to be unloaded. So, you were expecting your goods transit time to be, 15 days or 30 days from China, and now it's stuck there at the port for 3 or 4 weeks. And that's really what caused the problem. And also we had port closures in China as well. And Ningbo port was closed for a couple of weeks as well because of, outbreaks going on there. But that's basically the picture, and that's how prices have gone up. But there's also now a few things we can do about it in order to gain an advantage, because some people just give up and they're like, well, my product isn't profitable anymore because the shipping cost is too high. So I'm not going to develop this product, or I'm going to stop selling. But that's, in actual fact, with every problem, there's an opportunity, right? So let's now focus on the opportunities that are present and how we can now gain an advantage over other sellers. The first thing I would want to distinguish is that it's very, very important to understand the difference between a freight forwarder and a shipping line. The shipping lines are the ones which own those massive vessels, and they're companies like Maersk, Costco, Evergreen, MSC. But then the freight forwarders book containers on those shipping lines, and they'll book like 100 containers or 500 containers. They store up to 20,000 containers. They'll just book however many containers they need every week from Shanghai, Shenzhen, Ningbo, wherever it may be, to LA, to Houston, to New York. And a lot of people have this misconception that, oh, the freight forwarders are just trying to put the price up. They just want to make up for lost margin from previous years. They're actually making crazy profits, but that's really not the case. It's the shipping lines with limited capacity. And the freight forwarders are actually really trying to help us. And they're actually getting a lot of abuse because I'm friends with a lot of freight forwarders. I'm on the phone with them every week to say like, all right, how can we get the best prices and what's happening right now? And they're like, it's a disaster because, we're getting bookings from clients and then we use our capacity on these shipping lines. All of a sudden the shipping line cancels or changes or closes down a port. And then we have to agree that price that we agreed with the client and find them another vessel. And sometimes the price goes up and we make a loss. So if you have a good relationship with your freight forwarder, that's super important. Like the same way we have good relationships with our suppliers, we get better MOQs and better prices. Establishing a relationship with your freight forwarder is also very important, and they can also get you to the front of the line, and they can get you on a container in a couple of days if they have a space. But if all you've been doing is giving your freight forwarder abuse, saying, why is this late? Why is this so expensive? They're not going to be as willing to help you. So you kind of also have to have a bit of sympathy with them as well. The other thing I would say is that bulk discounts don't work here, because I was thinking, okay, cool, I'm going to get all my big seller friends together. We all ship accumulatively 200 containers per month. I'm going to go to a freight forwarder and be like, hey, rather than those 5 containers I was doing, here's 200, give us the best price. And they're like, well, Kian, that doesn't work because capacity is the issue. Well, I'd love to take your 200 container booking, but where they are getting advantages is like the smaller shipments, the LCLs, the lower container loads. So a 20-foot container can hold like 28 cubic meters. A 40-foot can hold 56 cubic meters. If you only have like 8 CBM or 10 CBM or 15 CBM, they can fit you into those like little spaces. So why that's important is that if you have, let's say, ordered 5,000 units from your supplier or from your factory, you can say, look, I'm only going to ship 2,000 units. I need you to keep 3,000 units in storage in your factory. And normally your factory will do this for you free of charge because they have good warehousing capabilities in their factory. These factories are normally quite large. And in that way, you're only paying the shipping cost on the 2,000 units, and you're sort of getting it at those lower container loads and being able to it's like Lego pieces, right? You're just getting those like little gaps, and you're just going to optimize those in order to get the best price because they can't be shipping full containers. And another thing that I've done, which I find quite successful, is going back to working in partnership with your supplier. Let's say, for example, you were paying $5,000 for a container before. Now the container price is $15,000. It's gone up $10,000. I say to my factory, look, with this $10,000 cost increase, it's no longer profitable for me to ship these products. Therefore, if I ship it at this price, I'm not going to make profit. I'm not going to make sales. So I have to cancel this order. However, because the increase is $10,000, if we work in partnership and if we split this cost 50-50, I pay 5K of the increase, you pay 5K of the increase, then we still ship the goods, we're still profitable, I'll get sales, and as a result of me getting sales, you get orders. So our business continues as normal. And the suppliers are very much well aware of what's happening with the freight prices because they're faced with these challenges as well. They're losing customers because of this. So asking your supplier or your factory to contribute to the cost increase can then greatly bring down your shipping costs, make your products profitable again, and also improve the relationship with your factory as well. Another thing I would say on top of that as well is that it's important now more than ever to get multiple quotes from multiple freight forwarders. You might have had this one freight forwarder that you've worked with for many years and you're like, oh, they've always given me the best price. But I work with multiple freight forwarders and each one is giving me a better price every couple of weeks, and the price is in related to how much capacity they have. So someone might give you a very high price because they literally don't have any more space, and someone might give you a very good price because some space is opened up. So there's no point just to go to one. You want to have maybe 4 at least that you quote from, and then I always say have 2 international freight forwarders. There's a lot of US freight forwarders that you probably work with, but also get some prices from some Chinese freight forwarders as well, because sometimes they can also get better prices as well based on the volume and the scale that they do. But be very, very careful if you work with a Chinese freight forwarder that it's still an FOB shipment, meaning you clear the goods through customs yourself. Because if it's DDP, which is direct delivery duty paid, your supplier clears the goods through customs for you. And why this is you have to approach with caution is that the price that they give you for the product also includes the shipping. And sometimes the price can be quite low, and you're like, oh, well, this guy gives the best price, I'm going to go with them. But what they've actually done is that they've cleared your good at a lesser duty rate than what it should be. So if your goods had 15% duty, maybe they've cleared it at a code which is 2% duty. And how that affects you is that if you get caught at customs, your goods get stuck and then you have to pay the fine and pay the balance. And some people had their goods stuck at customs for many months. So just if you do use a supplier for DDP shipment, ask them, can you confirm what is the HTS code which you're clearing these goods through customs for me? And then that way you can sort of make sure that you're getting the best price as well.
Wow. So there's three incredibly valuable pieces of information you just kind of gave there in that 10-minute slot. So I want to kind of make sure I got them all. First one was previously booking entire containers might have been at a discount where it's more expensive to ship LCL or less than. Now it's kind of swapped around because you're saying that they may have some capacity to fit in these smaller orders in this container. So it might be better to do that. Is that right?
Yeah. And you can also ask your freight forwarders as well, like, how can I get the best price from you? Is it in those lesser container loads or is it the full containers? Because the situation is dynamic and it's changing. But at the current state, yeah, that would be correct.
Okay. Kind of the world's flipped around there. That's good to know, and a great strategy I would not have thought of. So glad we did this. Second one, work with your supplier to maybe split the cost, because like you said, you're seeing suppliers losing customers. They know the shipping situation. So as long as it's a win-win for both sides, that's another good option as well to get these products shipped out.
Yeah, and the success of that will rely on the relationship that you have with your factory. So if it's your first order, it's very unlikely that you'll get that. But if you've done multiple orders, there's a much higher chance that you'll get that.
Okay, that's great to know as well. Luckily, I have like a really good relationship with my supplier. We're going through those conversations right now, so I'm seeing that happen. So that's also great advice. And then the third one, and I experience this too. It's kind of funny we're talking about this. I used to have one freight forwarder that I've known my entire e-commerce career. I've used them for everything, and for the first time in several years, I'm actually gotten quotes from a couple different ones, and what I didn't realize is, like, you kind of like open my eyes to this. It's not necessarily that my freight forwarder, who I have a really good relationship, isn't trying to gouge me. They just don't have the capacity. And so me going to someone else where they do, that's why they're giving us the prices here, because they can fill the capacity where others can't right now.
For sure.
Cool. So that's great advice to kind of build relationships with these people. You're right about that. The relationships is such a big part of this business, whether you're suppliers, freight forwarders, kind of even later on building it with your customers down the road. But right now it's a supply chain issue. So doing those three things right there is really, really good advice. And then let's talk a little bit more about FOB and DDP. So for people who are just getting involved in the whole e-commerce business, can you explain the difference between FOB shipping and DDP?
Sure, yeah. And there's also one more which we should explain as well. You have Ex Works as well. So let's think of it from like the factory, the port in China, the port in the US, and then delivered to your final customer. Ex Works is, we are literally making this product for you and you pick it up from the factory. So whatever freight cost you pay for is going directly to the factory and then moving it out from there. FOB, which is freight on board or free on board, is the most common type of shipment. That's my preferred option. That's what most people do as well. And that is essentially in the price of your product. Your supplier will deliver your goods from their warehouse to their local port. So if they're based in Xiamen, the goods will be dropped off to your freight forwarder's warehouse in the port of Xiamen, and then you pay for the cost shipping it from the port in China all the way to either your warehouse or into Amazon or even your home. And then DDP is when the supplier's like, we're going to cover the cost of that all the way. So the cost that you pay is for your goods, your import duty, and the cost delivered to your final warehouse as well. DDP is normally more common, if it's a smaller item and maybe like, let's say leather wallets or key rings, and you've ordered like 300 pieces and it can fit in 2 boxes. They'll normally send it by air or by courier. That's quite often, right, let's just send it out by DHL or FedEx and then it's on the way to you. But for slightly bigger shipments, then it's going to be most likely FOB. But it's quite important to understand the difference between all three. And if you ever want to, compare the pricing, you can always ask your supplier for the price. Can you give me the Ex Works price, the FOB price, and the DDP price? And then you can kind of compare, adding your freight cost onto the unit cost, how they compare. But FOB is normally the most common and the best way of moving product.
That's awesome. Kian, thank you so much for everything today. There's a ton more than I know we could get into now, but I think I want to save a little bit for a future podcast with you. You are just a treasure trove of knowledge in this industry. Where you, by the way, where are you? You mentioned you're from Scotland, but is that where you're at right now?
No, right now I'm actually in Dubai. I actually moved here like 10 months ago during the situation. I just actually came here on holiday, and then I just thought I really like it here. No lockdown, great weather, is tax-free, much closer to China as well, only 4 hours time difference. So I was like, this is ideal. And then just set up everything here, got a visa, and then just never went back to the UK.
There's a theme. You move to you visit places that you like and you end up living there. So we need to get you to visit Austin again and see if that might happen.
I would love to come back to Austin. I've been a couple of times. I had nothing but great memories. So by all means, I would definitely love to come back. One final thing I would mention, though, is quite important that we need to consider right now is that Chinese New Year is on the 1st of February. Because of that, the factories and the ports tend to close down the month before. So there's not going to be much movement of products or shipments in January. Therefore, if you need to get orders out before the end of the year, before Q4, you have to start planning those shipments now, because November and December are going to start to get even busier than they are now, and probably even more expensive as well. So definitely start to plan out your shipments for Q1, Q2 next year right now.
That's great advice. And then what about, aren't there some similar issues after Chinese New Year is over? Everyone's trying to manufacture and get products shipped out as well?
Yeah, exactly. Because we've just had this like 1 month of a lack of shipments. Now there's a pile up again. But, luckily being involved in this business for so long, I haven't had like too many quality issues with products. But what I can say is whenever I have had a product quality issue, it's always been the goods which have been manufactured either right before Chinese New Year or right after Chinese New Year. And the reason is that right before Chinese New Year, the workers are in a rush to be like, okay, I've got 10 orders left before we're done for the holidays. They kind of rush the production, ship them out. So for anyone who doesn't do a pre-shipment inspection, Q4 is the absolute best time to do it, because they'll spot any potential issues that your products may have, which were rushed. And then on the flip side, because factory workers is often like a people migration, they come from different areas in China to then work to that factory. Let's say if you worked in an electronic factory making webcams, and then in Shenzhen, and then you're like, actually, I really fancy making, duvet blankets or bed sheets. There's a factory in the north, slightly nicer area. They pay a little bit more. I'm going to make bed sheets this year. They'll go to another factory, but they've just been making cameras the year before. So now they need to be trained how to make bed sheets. So they get thrown onto the production line. They get trained a little bit, but it's their first time making this item. So again, you can watch out for quality issues right after Chinese New Year as well. And this doesn't happen all the time, because, sometimes they have the regular workers that come back, but it happens as well. And I've seen it. So any shipments that are going out just for Chinese New Year or right after Chinese New Year, definitely get your pre-shipment inspection, get the shipment approved by a third party before you ship anything out.
I'm glad you brought that up. Those are two great tips right there. Make sure if you get some orders in so they're shipped out before the port shut down for Chinese New Year, and if you have anything being manufactured right before or right after, definitely make sure you have those inspected, because those are the higher chances of having some kind of product-related issues.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Kian, thank you so much for joining us today for the Branded Podcast. If people want to reach out to you and take advantage of your expertise, how can they do that?
Absolutely. Thanks. So I do have a YouTube channel called Sourcing with Kian, where I've just put videos out just all about sourcing. Same, I have a Facebook group of the same name as well. So I'd encourage you guys to join that as well. I'm on Instagram, which is Kian_JG. And I'm also been working on something very, very special, building out a sourcing platform, which I'll share more information about, but that's in collaboration with Titan. And we'll have some really cool news and offers for you guys coming up soon as well. And that's at Titan Sourcing.
Well, awesome. Excited to hear about that. And hopefully I will see you next month. This will probably drop this episode sometime in October. Probably see you down in Orlando in November at the Titan event.
Can't wait, Mike. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing you.
All right. Thanks so much, Kian. Thanks everyone for joining us today on the Branded by Amazing podcast. If you have any questions for Matt or I, or for Kian, or for any one of our guests, feel free to drop them below here, or to shoot an email to us at Amazing.com. So thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.